The cafeteria in the Rayburn building had never been quiet. Forks clinked, shoes scuffed, political aides murmured over microwaved lasagna. But that Friday afternoon, one sound cut through everything. A metal lunch tray hit the floor hard. A moment of startled silence. Then, just as quickly, the room resumed its rhythm. Except Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She sat alone at the far corner table, one hand on her binder, one hand around a paper cup of lukewarm tea. Then came the whisper. Low, nervous, meant for no one, but somehow meant for her. He's got money in it. That's why they got the contracts. Jasmine didn't look up. She took a slow sip, lips pressed to the lid, eyes never leaving the notes in front of her. But her ears had just caught something the rest of the room had already forgotten. And her gut, that gut honed from years in the courtroom, clenched tight. Something was wrong, and she could feel it. Most people would have let it go. A whisper in a crowded room, a rumor without a name, just another capital ghost story. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't most people. She never had the luxury of ignoring her instincts, because ignoring them once had almost cost someone their life. She didn't believe everything she heard, but she believed in patterns. And something about that whisper felt like a loose thread in a very dangerous suit. She leaned back in her chair, fingers brushing the edge of her binder, replaying the words again in her head. He's got money in it. Not angry, not gossipy, nervous. And that made all the difference. Washington, D.C. had mastered the art of stillness. On the surface, marble halls, polished speeches, bipartisan brunches. Underneath, a jungle, where silence was strategy and secrets paid better than facts. Jasmine had learned early that power didn't always announce itself, sometimes it whispered. She was a black woman, a former public defender, with a memory sharp as a scalpel and a voice trained to cut through courtroom noise. To some, that made her brilliant. To others, dangerous. And now they were starting to notice. By Monday morning, the whisper had turned into a pattern. In a closed-door meeting on infrastructure oversight, someone mentioned Florida's bloated defense allocations. Later that same afternoon, during a review on cybersecurity budgets, the same two companies showed up in a procurement chart, both based out of Tampa. Both connected to recent Rubio-backed proposals. No one said his name directly, but Jasmine was listening. And then finally, during a hallway exchange between two junior staffers, one muttered under his breath, "It's always Rubio. It always comes back to him." That was 3 times in less than 36 hours. 3 different rooms, 3 different people, one name. Jasmine leaned over her desk that night, red pen in hand. She circled 2 company names, Havenwell Dynamics and Lindrix Tech. Both had secured multi-year defense contracts quietly, consistently, and without public bids. Their board members, murky. Their finances, slippery. Their performance reviews, redacted. And yet, they kept winning. What tied them together? Marco Rubio's signature. Bill after bill, committee after committee, his name was always stamped at the bottom. Jasmine didn't have evidence yet, but she had a map. And if Washington had taught her anything, it was this. When the same name keeps coming up in the shadows, that's not coincidence, that's a signal. The text came at 9:47 p.m. No contact name, no greeting, just a line that felt colder than the air outside Jasmine's apartment window. Meet me near the bottom escalator at Union Station. Navy windbreaker. Don't bring anyone. She stared at it, unreadable expression frozen on her face. Not a threat. Not exactly an invitation either. It felt like a test. Vaughn, her chief of staff, was still in the office next door. She almost called him. Almost. But she didn't. Instead, she scribbled a note on a yellow sticky pad. Union Station, "Watch your phone. If I don't text in 45, call it in." She stuck it to Vaughn's monitor. Quiet, deliberate. Then she grabbed her coat, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and stepped into the night. Union Station pulsed with its usual chaos. Luggage wheels, loudspeaker announcements, the smell of pretzels and espresso battling in the air. Jasmine walked with purpose, not too fast, not too slow. She scanned the crowd without turning her head, eyes calm but alert. She wasn't here for theatrics, she was here for answers. Near the bottom escalator, the foot traffic thinned. The air got colder. She paused near the Dunkin' Donuts stand, pretended to check the train schedule on her phone. And then she saw him. Mid-30s, clean-shaven, nervous eyes. Navy windbreaker, hands buried deep in his pockets. He didn't wave, he didn't smile. He just gave a single nod and started walking toward the stairwell. Jasmine followed. They walked in silence down a narrow stairwell near the back of the station. Jasmine kept her distance. The man didn't look back, just kept moving right past the bookstore, through a service hallway, until they reached a side exit barely lit by a flickering bulb. He stopped, finally turned to face her, voice low, hands shaking just slightly. "You don't know me," he said, "and that's a good thing. I'm not doing this twice. I'm not showing up again. I just need this off me." He reached into the inside pocket of his windbreaker, pulled out a thick manila envelope sealed with tape on all sides. Held it out. Didn't say a word. Jasmine didn't reach for it right away. She looked at him. Really looked. Late 30s, pale, sleepless. Something behind the eyes, not fear exactly, but fatigue. "You worked for Rubio?" she asked. He gave a short nod. 5 years, legislative ops, then scheduling. I knew enough, but not everything, not until the last 6 months. He's not who he says he is, and someone needs to stop this before it gets worse. He rubbed the back of his neck, looked away. "I thought about going to a reporter, but that's suicide. They'll dig me up in a week." He looked at her straight now. "You ask the kind of questions that make things move." Jasmine finally took the envelope. It was heavy, not just with paper, but with consequence. "What's inside?" she asked. Money trails, emails, pressure points, internal memos, enough to show just how deep he's tied in. He hesitated. "And names. You'll see names you won't believe." "Just protect mine." Jasmine nodded. "Your name won't leave my lips unless you say so." He gave a faint smile, one that didn't reach his eyes, checked his watch, then said, almost as a warning, "Be careful. They don't come at you loud. They come quiet. And they ruin your life one piece at a time." And then he was gone. Back at her apartment, Jasmine locked the door and pulled the curtains tight. No music, no lights. Just her, a single lamp over the dining table, and the envelope. She placed it down like a ticking clock. Then, slowly, deliberately, peeled the tape and opened it. Inside, printed email chains, some with subject lines like "Winter Push" and "Agency Sweep." Photocopies of bank transfers between Rubio-aligned PACs and a Delaware shell corporation. Bonus memos from contractors referencing unsecured approvals and priority scheduling. And near the bottom, a flash drive wrapped in a sticky note that simply read, "Check last folder audio inside." Jasmine swallowed hard. This wasn't just paper. This was a map of corruption. She clicked open the USB folder on her laptop. Dozens of files, names, contracts, digital logs. And then near the end, a single audio file titled simply "Oversight Delay Confidential." She pressed play. SCN. You know what needs to happen. Agent. They're not even on the short list. SCN. Don't make this difficult. You want my support on reallocation, then do your job. Jasmine paused it, then rewound and played it again. SCN. That was short for Senator. The voice wasn't labeled, but she knew that tone. She'd heard Marco Rubio speak in dozens of hearings. It was him. She was listening to a United States senator ordering a federal agency to rig a contract live. As she scrolled through the rest of the USB contents, one name kept showing up. Not a full name, just initials. Over and over again. CM. CM wants this pushed through. CM says we skip security for now. CM needs a face-to-face with R before the vote. Jasmine leaned back. This wasn't just Rubio anymore. There was someone else, someone higher, someone pulling strings from the shadows. And all anyone called him was CM. By midnight, Jasmine's apartment looked like the inside of a forensic lab. Laptops open, screens glowing, printouts everywhere scattered across the table, sofa, floor. Vaughn had arrived 20 minutes after she called, still tying his hoodie strings, holding a takeout container he'd never get to eat. "Jesus, Jazz," he whispered, scanning the first page. "This isn't just bad, it's organized." She didn't respond. She was already knee-deep in Effie filings tracking campaign donations from PACs with names like American Resolve Initiative and Future Front Holdings. Meanwhile, Vaughn pulled up LinkedIn job histories. He cross-referenced former contractors with Senate procurement meetings. 3 names overlapped, all of them once listed as policy consultants for firms Rubio had fast-tracked. Then came the dark web domain search. One of the Delaware shell companies, Shoreline Consulting, had a back-end server linked to a location in Zurich, and one of its board members, Rubio's sister-in-law. Vaughn exhaled. They built this like a maze. Fake LLCs, international bank routes, education grants used to funnel defense dollars. It's smart, but not airtight. By 4:13 a.m., the air smelled like cold coffee and high-stakes panic. Jasmine rubbed her eyes, looked at the list they'd built on the whiteboard. Contractors, lobbyists, Rubio's donors, and buried in the center, the initials CM. "You see it now?" she asked quietly. Vaughn nodded, eyes heavy. "This isn't just Rubio. It's a whole system rigged to protect itself." And Jasmine, she wasn't blinking anymore. She leaned in, red marker in hand. "Then let's start drawing the lines." It wasn't one company, it wasn't even 10. There were 15 shell companies, all registered to 3 law firms in Delaware, each one with generic names like Glenfront Holdings, Tidewell Group, Orion Revive. Each one with a different mailing address, a different manager, and a different P.O. box. And yet all of them had the same subtle fingerprint. Donated to the same 2 Florida universities, shared board members with Rubio-aligned PACs, sent funds to the same Swiss trust account every quarter. Vaughn zoomed out on the network chart. It looked like a spider's web. Jasmine leaned over it, arms crossed. "This wasn't an accident," she muttered. "It's a blueprint." They found grant proposals, dozens designed to funnel defense funds through university research centers. On paper, it looked like support for military innovation. But dig just one layer deeper, and the same subcontractors kept showing up. Companies like Havenwell Dynamics and Lindrix Tech were recipients of university-sponsored pilot programs funded with taxpayer dollars. But the output? Nothing but paper. No results, no audits, just signed contracts. Vaughn slammed a folder shut. They're laundering contracts through college campuses. You know how messed up that is? Jasmine didn't blink. I used to teach law at one of those schools. She stepped back, scanned the wall. They had names. They had institutions. They had patterns. But what they didn't have yet was proof of intent. And without that, the whole thing could still be spun, explained away, buried. But Jasmine wasn't done. She pulled a red string from the corkboard and connected 3 key files. 1, a PAC director's email, Clear the board before January. HWD can't lose that contract. 2. A wire receipt showing $1.3 million routed through an education grant. 3. An internal message, CM says push now, before oversight kicks in. She stared at the last line. CM. Again. This maze isn't perfect, she said, but it's close. Too close. The message came at 3:18 a.m. Same unknown number, same clipped tone. You got it, but they're watching now. You're on a list. No name, no instructions, just that cold, blunt final. Jasmine read it twice, then showed it to Vaughn. He exhaled and shook his head. They know we're moving. Jasmine nodded, calm on the outside, but in her chest, her heart was pounding. At 4:42 a.m., the lights flickered. Once, twice, then died completely. The room dropped into sudden darkness. Only the soft glow of Vaughn's laptop remained. Power grid issue, he asked, already reaching for his phone. Jasmine didn't answer. She was walking to the window. Outside, a black SUV circled the block, slowed, paused, then kept going. Her gut twisted. 5 minutes later, a knock. Jasmine froze. Vaughn stepped forward. A man in a reflective vest stood outside the door. Routine utility check. Grid fluctuation in the area, he said flatly. But Vaughn had already called the city. There's no work order, he whispered to Jasmine. She nodded once, then called security. By the time they arrived, the man was gone. No badge, no name, no trace. Just a phantom in a vest. Later that morning, Jasmine checked her hallway camera. The feed cut. Blacked out from 4:39 to 4:56 a.m. exactly during the outage. They were probing, not kicking down doors yet, but watching, testing, looking for cracks. Vaughn looked at her eyes tense. This is where most people back off. Jasmine didn't blink. Then I'm not most people. The room was windowless, cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. 12 chairs, one long table. No press, no cameras, no distractions. Just the weight of what was about to happen. Jasmine Crockett walked in without a word. Behind her, Vaughn carried a leather folio, thick, worn, and heavy. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Each step felt like a countdown. Chairwoman Alida Frey, the centrist from Oregon, tapped her gavel once. Representative Crockett, you may proceed. Jasmine nodded, unsnapped the folio, and handed out printed packets one by one. Each page a layer. Each packet a window into something dark. Silence filled the room. No clearing of throats. No scribbling pens. Just eyes reading. And then she said it. Her voice was steady, calm, surgical. These documents include transaction records, internal memos, and a whistleblower's sworn testimony, implicating Senator Marco Rubio in coordinated efforts to manipulate federal contract approvals for personal gain. One senator furrowed his brow. Another adjusted his glasses. But no one interrupted. Then Jasmine reached into her bag and pulled out a small black speaker. You'll want to hear this. She tapped play. A man's voice filled the room, crisp, confident, chilling. If Rubio says they get the deal, they get the deal. I don't care what the audit says. Make it happen, or we'll find someone else who will. No one moved. No one breathed. The words hung in the air like smoke. Acrid, indisputable. Chairwoman Frey leaned forward, voice even. Representative Crockett, what exactly are you asking this committee to do? Jasmine didn't hesitate. I'm asking for a formal ethics investigation into Senator Marco Rubio. And I'm requesting the evidence be referred to the Department of Justice for criminal review. Her eyes swept the room. Her voice did not rise, but it didn't need to. If we ignore this, we don't just fail the people, we become the problem. It wasn't supposed to happen, not yet. Jasmine had kept everything under wraps, hard copies locked, USB drives encrypted, staff sworn to silence. But by 6:32 a.m. the next morning, it was too late. Front page of the Kansas City Ledger. $246 million fraud, Senator Rubio at center of secret defense deal. Below the headline, a single scanned page from the packet. One email, one signature, Marco Rubio's. Vaughn stormed into Jasmine's office, paper trembling in his hand. Who leaked it? This wasn't supposed to be public. Jasmine stared at the screen. The article was spreading fast. Twitter, cable news, think pieces before breakfast. Too clean, too deliberate. Someone wanted this out, she said quietly, not to help us, to control the narrative. And it worked. By noon, pundits on both sides were screaming. Cable anchors spun it as a witch hunt. Columnists questioned the validity. Some called it treason. And some, they started digging fast. By 3 p.m., Jasmine's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, committee staff, anonymous numbers. Everyone wanted the full file. But Jasmine knew better. We release this now, she told Vaughn, and it dies in the noise. They want chaos. We give them facts. She opened her drawer, pulled out the second folio, thicker than the first. Not just one page, not just one quote, all of it. It didn't take long. Within 24 hours of the Kansas City Ledger leak, the backlash began. And it came fast and dirty. Right-wing outlets flooded the airwaves. Crockett's manufactured scandal, a leftist smear campaign targeting a patriot. Who's really behind the leak? Soros? The deep state? Cable pundits replayed old clips of Jasmine in heated debates edited for maximum outrage. Anonymous social media accounts pushed doctored images, fake quotes, false timelines. One meme went viral, Jasmine tearing up the Constitution. Photoshopped, of course, but no one cared. But it wasn't just smear campaigns. In Rubio's home state of Florida, 3 school districts suddenly lost federal funding. The reason? Budget restructuring due to oversight uncertainty. Translation: punishment. Vaughn slammed the laptop shut in frustration. This isn't pushback, Jazz. This is war. Jasmine didn't flinch. She stood near the window, staring at the Capitol dome glowing in the distance. She had a choice. Hide, wait, back off, or open the camera, she said. We're going live. The screen flickered on. No filter, no team, no script. Just Jasmine in her living room in a plain navy blouse. And fire in her voice. Let's be clear, noise doesn't change facts. They can spin it, shout it, smear me, but the numbers won't lie. The documents don't lie, and neither will I. If they think fear will silence me, they clearly don't know who they're dealing with. She ended the stream in one click, and just like that, millions had heard her. The initials had haunted every document Jasmine read. CM, always mentioned, never explained. CM wants this fast-tracked. CM says R will handle it. CM gave the green light. A ghost inside the machine. Until 4:17 a.m. Saturday. That's when Vaughn finally broke through an archived email header from 2020. There it was, buried in the routing metadata, Marin. Calvin at Prodigy Intel. Vaughn stared, then whispered, "Oh my God, Calvin Marin." Calvin Marin, former Intel officer, now CEO of Protego Intel, a shadowy defense analytics firm. Known in DC circles as the Invisible Broker. Never gives interviews, never testifies, no photos in the press, but his name unlocks doors and buries enemies. He doesn't fund candidates, he builds the machines that pick them. And there it was. Havenwell Dynamics, the company Jasmine had been tracing, had received its startup data infrastructure from Protego. Same servers, same architecture, same fingerprints. And through a Delaware shell, one key transfer $11.8 million from a PAC controlled by Rubio to a data services subcontractor that linked back to Calvin Marin. Jasmine leaned back in her chair, staring at the name glowing on the screen. "So CM isn't just part of the system," she whispered. "He built it. It was never just about Rubio." That became clear the deeper Jasmine read. Yes, Rubio signed the budgets. Yes, Rubio pushed the contracts. But Rubio didn't build the path, he walked it. It was Calvin Marin who paved it. The money trails, the ghost companies, the fake oversight panels, all of it led back to Marin. Vaughn scrolled to the bottom of a confidential slide deck titled Continuity Strategy Executive Access Model. There, in faded type, a quote unattributed but unmistakably his, "I don't run candidates, I buy the room they're standing in." Vaughn read it aloud. Jasmine didn't blink. "He doesn't pull strings," she said. "He owns the damn puppet theater." He had no office, no public appointment, no votes, no accountability. But Calvin Marin controlled defense contracts, procurement officers, political narratives, and the careers of those who questioned him. "This isn't about one corrupted senator," Jasmine muttered. "This is about a private government run by a man nobody ever elected." And suddenly the stakes were no longer political, they were existential. It started small, an unanswered text, then a missed morning meeting, then complete silence. Matthew Cord, Jasmine's personal aide for the past 3 years, was just gone. No call, no explanation, no forwarding message, nothing. At first, Vaughn tried to stay calm. "Maybe he's sick, burned out, or just needed time," he said. But Jasmine knew better. Matthew was methodical, loyal, precise. He never missed check-ins, not without a word, and never during a week this crucial. Vaughn pulled his badge log. The last time Matthew swiped into the Longworth building was Tuesday night, 9:43 p.m. No record of him leaving. No CCTV footage from that floor after that time. Jasmine stared at the screen. Her hands trembled slightly. That night, Matthew had left the office carrying one folder labeled HWD Marin Private Comms. The folder never returned. "What if," Jasmine muttered, her voice tight, "he didn't just disappear? What if he was silenced?" An hour later, Vaughn got a ping, not from Capitol Security, but from a private CCTV feed pulled from a civilian contractor who owed Vaughn a favor. Timestamp 10:16 p.m. Tuesday night. Location parking garage under Protego Intel's DC Annex. The clip was grainy but undeniable. Matthew, flanked by 2 men in black suits, escorted, no struggle, no sound, just gone. Jasmine leaned forward, heart pounding. "He didn't betray us," she said quietly. "They got to him first." The silence was no longer a warning, it was a message. And now, whoever they were, they knew exactly what she knew. The gym was packed. Fold-out chairs squeaked under veterans, nurses, teachers, and single moms who'd driven in from 3 counties just to ask one question: what now? Jasmine stood under the harsh gym lights. No teleprompter, no script. Just her and the people. A former Marine jacket lined with campaign pins stood slowly. His voice cracked. "You poked the system, ma'am. Now they're awake. What happens next?" The room stilled. Even the air seemed to pause. Jasmine didn't blink. She leaned forward, hands gripping the mic. "We keep pulling. We don't stop just because it gets loud." She glanced around at the rows of worn faces and tired eyes. They built this thing on the belief that we wouldn't ask, that we'd stay afraid. But they've never met people like us. Applause erupted, not the loud political kind, but the deep, aching kind that comes from people who've been overlooked too long. She continued, voice steadier now. They count on silence, on confusion, on thinking you're alone. But the truth, every time you ask the right question, someone else feels brave enough to do the same. A teacher raised her hand. What if they come after you? Jasmine smiled, not bravado, but steel. Then I'll know I'm right where I need to be. The crowd rose in waves, some clapping, others tearing up. For the first time since the leak, Jasmine felt something heavier than fear. She felt momentum. The classroom smelled like dry erase markers and peanut butter sandwiches. Jasmine had been invited for a community civic week to speak to third graders at a small elementary school just outside Austin. She almost said no. The threats had gotten louder, the headlines nastier, the silence from colleagues colder. But something in her said, go anyway. She wore no suit today, just a blue cardigan and soft flats. She sat on a tiny plastic chair, knees nearly to her chest, surrounded by 28 wide-eyed 8-year-olds. The questions started simple. What does a congresswoman do? Do you get to meet the president? Then one hand went up, small, hesitant, trembling just a little. A brown-skinned girl with a missing front tooth and a braid too tight asked, "Are you scared of the people who lied?" The room fell silent. Jasmine didn't answer right away. She looked at the girl, then at the teacher, then back to the ceiling tiles where a paper rocket hung by yarn. Finally, she leaned in and said softly, "I was, for a long time." She paused long enough for the quiet to settle. But not anymore, because when truth is spoken, even by just one person, it doesn't stay small, it grows. The little girl nodded slowly, then smiled. The class clapped like they'd just seen magic. But for Jasmine, it was magic. Not the applause, but the question. The courage it took for a child to ask something most adults were too afraid to say. And in that tiny classroom, Jasmine felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Not just bravery, but clarity. The bill had teeth, and Jasmine made sure they knew it. 3 weeks after the leak, the headlines had cooled, but the halls of Congress were boiling. In room 311 of the Longworth building, Jasmine Crockett stepped forward with a folder in one hand, conviction in the other. The Public Trust and Procurement Act. It didn't sound explosive at first, but inside its 14 pages was a fuse long enough to burn down decades of quiet corruption. If passed, the bill would require all members of Congress and any of their immediate family members to disclose indirect ownership shell companies and foreign financial holdings tied to federal contracts. No more hiding behind cousins in Miami or LLCs in Delaware. Jasmine stood beside two co-sponsors, Rep. Marisol Vega from California and Rep. Darnell Owens from Georgia. All three had received anonymous threats. All three showed up anyway. Transparency isn't optional, Jasmine told the press. If you're profiting from public power, you should be prepared to explain every dollar. The cameras snapped. Reporters shouted questions. Behind the podium, Rubio's allies looked like they'd swallowed glass. Whispers flew across committee rooms. Lobbyists went silent. Even some Democrats hesitated. It was one thing to support accountability. It was another to bring that fire into your own house. But Jasmine was done waiting. "This isn't just about Rubio anymore," she said behind closed doors. "It's about all the shadows we've let grow too long. It's time to turn on the damn lights." That night, her name trended again. But this time, not because of scandal, because of the spark she had lit. The chamber was so quiet you could hear the soft click of the vote buttons. No shouting, no gavel pounding, just a heavy, historical stillness. The tally came in at 3:17 p.m., 71 yay, 25 nay, 4 abstained. Marco Rubio, senior senator from Florida, former presidential candidate, architect of dozens of defense spending bills, had just been formally expelled from the United States Senate. The last time that had happened, 1920. Even the marble seemed to hold its breath. In the gallery, Jasmine Crockett didn't smile, didn't blink. She simply watched the number appear on the board. A century-old silence broken by the truth. Senators stared at their desks. Some looked relieved, others furious, a few afraid. Because if Rubio could fall, anyone could. "Let this not be revenge," Jasmine would say to a reporter later that night. "Let this be a reckoning." Outside, protesters chanted. Reporters ran down marble steps waving phones. Inside, history had just changed its script. And Jasmine Crockett, she didn't celebrate. She walked out calm, steady, and disappeared into the fog outside the Capitol. But the echo of the vote would follow them all. There were no champagne toasts, no victory lap, no smug tweets. Jasmine Crockett sat alone in her office as the city buzzed with headlines, pundits, and applause. She didn't feel triumphant. "This isn't a victory," she told Vaughn quietly, not looking up from the files still spread across her desk. "It's what should have happened from the start." Rubio's fall was historic, but Jasmine knew the real puppeteer was still out there: Calvin Marin. The name still lingered like smoke at the back of her mind, powerful, faceless, untouched. There were no emails with his signature, no recordings of his voice, no traceable donations. Yet every major thread she followed seemed to pass through his invisible hands. And while Rubio had taken the fall, the system still stood. The revolving doors, the offshore accounts, the handshakes in the dark. "You think this is over?" she whispered to herself. This was just the opening act. From her window, the Capitol dome glowed under a foggy night sky. She leaned back, closed the folder gently, and reached for a new one. Labeled Marin, underlined twice in red ink. It had been months. Winter had passed, and with it, the noise. No more hearings, no more flashing headlines, no more texts at midnight. Just stillness. Jasmine found him near the lake in upstate Maryland, where the water moved like glass under the spring sun. Elias Brenner, the man in the windbreaker. The man who started it all. He sat alone on a bench, hands folded, eyes tracing ripples in the water. He didn't look up as Jasmine approached, but when she sat beside him, he smiled without turning. "You didn't just stop one man," he said softly. "You reminded us it's possible." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the final report from the Independent Oversight Board. Contract rigging confirmed. Monetary trail traced. New ethics laws in progress. She placed it gently in his hand. "You were right to speak up," she said. "You weren't alone." For the first time in months, Elias exhaled deep whole, like a man no longer holding his breath. They sat in silence for a long while, just two people on a bench watching the stillness ripple. But inside both of them, the movement had already begun again. No system of corruption ever collapses from the inside. It takes one voice, steady, unshaken, to crack the surface. Jasmine Crockett didn't have the most power. She didn't have the biggest platform. But she had something stronger than fear, conviction. And that's what broke the chain. In a world where it's easier to look away, this story reminds us truth doesn't need an army, just someone brave enough to carry it. So whether you're a teacher, a veteran, a nurse, or a retired worker, your voice still matters. Your courage, your questions, your refusal to stay silent, it all adds up. And maybe it changes everything. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, inspired, or simply more aware of what's beneath the surface, subscribe now. Because on this channel, we don't just tell stories, we uncover truths the world wants to forget. And together, we make sure they're never buried again.